Hey there, this is Sagar from Live the Life You Love. Today we're going to have a chat with Valentine Giraud. She's a leadership coach, and of course we're going to talk about leadership today. It's very, very important that everything we do in our lives, we do it with the qualities of a good leader. We remember those projects which we hated and the projects that we loved, and we can clearly differentiate our level of satisfaction based on the qualities of the leaders of those projects. Valentine talks about 3 qualities of a good leader, and her thoughts and her perspective on this is completely different from mainstream thoughts about leadership. We're also going to talk about Valentine's travels in India and Africa, which were very, very important journeys in her life. So I hope you enjoy this interview. So let's start with the important question. How did you feel in India regarding your spirituality? How was it already connected to that? Was it like a calling? Was it like meant to happen?
I totally believe so.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I went, my grandfather, who had already been in India, he said, and who is someone that I really appreciate and follow, he said, a trip to India can change your mind.
Yeah.
And I was 23 at the time, and I said, yeah, well, any trip can change your life, you know? But I didn't realize, I really underestimated what it actually meant. And indeed, it really, as I said, like it changed me, like my molecular composition, I would say, changed. I became a different being. And now I understand people say like, oh, I had a transformative experience. That's what I had in India. It was this transformative experience. And in a way, it was very, very, very spiritual. Even though I wasn't connected to any teacher or any ashram. It was just this spiritual awakening. Like my soul woke up. Literally, like my spirit woke up when I got there. And I never felt so sharp in my head, in my mind. It was, maybe I'm interpreting it and maybe it isn't so, but it's like the image that comes to me that I probably was how do you say that? Someone that meditated and studied yoga and meditation a lot and whose mind had developed a lot because of it. And somehow when I got back, I just got back in touch with it right away.
Yeah.
It didn't take me 2 months to be shaking my head and wearing completely Indian. People would think that I was Indian.
Yeah.
It was.
You do like an Indian.
I could, right? Like if I tied my hair and put a little veil on top. I'm done. A bindi, I'm done. So yeah, and it was interesting because when returning to Brazil, I went to see. I went to be part of a ceremony of my own tradition here in Brazil.
What was that ceremony?
Well, the tradition is called Umbanda,
which
is an Afro-Brazilian tradition that mixes indigenous tradition, African tradition, and Christianity, and where spirits play a big role. So basically what happens is we channel those spirits, and we've got sessions with them, and it's a lot based on drumming and singing. So I went to the ceremony, and the spirits there said to me, oh, you've traveled really far away, didn't you? And I was like, yes. And he's like, well, and you went to a land of masters. I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, and you've belonged to that place once, so you went there to reconnect with that wisdom. And that touched me so dearly. So ever since then, everything have shifted in my life, and India has imprinted in me something that nowhere else has done so.
So you were born and brought up in Brazil.
It's really loud, eh?
It's all right.
It's all right. I was born and brought up in Brazil.
And you traveled a few countries before you went.
Yeah. Luckily, my family is very much of a traveler's family, and so from early on, my mom have always not only taken us to travel, but really urged us to travel. And so when I was in college and I had this opportunity to doing this internship, I said to myself, okay, well, I don't want to just go to Ecuador or something. I want to go really far away.
Yeah.
And so I went to India. But I had already lived in France before that and in Canada before that.
But you never had that level of connection that you had with yourself and
No.
the change that you saw in yourself, that you saw in India.
No, India was a whole octave, like it was a whole other level of experience.
So what was the few things, if you could remember, that really made you change, that really changed your perspective, and maybe in the end that changed who you are?
For sure, okay, a few images that come to mind.
Yeah.
The first one is like the first time I dressed a sari. Like really, something inside me just like awakened.
Okay.
And it was this sense of like this adored, wild, voluptuous, omnipresent, like feminine force that just took over, you know? And it really was a transformative act. Like I couldn't, like I was too big to hold in my own body, you know? It was just this sense of like expansion that I felt. Amazing. It was just, and I often looked at Indian women with such admiration for how they hold themselves. And so much grace and elegancy, and you know, because it's not easy to hold a sari and to dress with a sari. It isn't.
Yeah.
And how women do that, it's amazing. You know, even carrying like piles of bricks on their head, they do it. So, and then feeling that on my own skin was amazing. The second thing was when I first moved. I stayed at an Indian family, and the mom was really sweet, and we became really close together. We would
Did you call her mom as well?
Nee, auntie.
Okay.
And we would sit on the porch, in the afternoon, and I can, like, even as I speak, I can see the sky and I can smell the taste of Jaipur. Like everything just comes back to me.
Yeah.
And we became really close together. Then I moved out of their house to my own home, where I would share it with other 3 students from different parts of the world. And the week after I came back to have tea with her, and she asked me, so Valentine, how's your new home? And I told her, and she was like, and how are your new colleagues? Do they like your nature? And that just stroked me. I was like, holy smackers, like this is a complete reverse of mindset. Like it's not whether I like them.
Yeah.
Because in the West, that's how we are trained to see the world. It's through my own lenses and through my own liking, and whether
I see what you mean.
whether I want it, whether it pleases me, whether it fulfills me, whether it makes me happy. Me. I. Whereas there, she was completely shifting it and telling me, do they like you? And not you, but do they like your nature? Because you can't change who you are, but your nature, you can tame it, you can change it, you can mold it.
Do you think so?
I do. I think essential things are always there.
Yeah.
But I think self-development and growth is there for that. You know.
I understand.
So I love just like the way, like the words that she chose. You know, do they like your nature? And the way she put it, it was so graciously and so, you know, unpretentious, and that always stayed with me. And then on that same page, when I was learning Hindi, you know, like the conjugation, right? We do I, you, he, she, it, and again, it's the same order. Like the I comes in third place or something. It begins with you formal, and then at least the way I learned it, and then the fourth one probably is I.
I see what you mean.
So again, it's the same thing, you know, like the us and the community and the other takes more importance than the I.
So that was your biggest lesson, I would say, in India, to put others in front of you?
It's not that I didn't. It's just to realize that there is a worldview which is completely different than ours.
I see.
You know, and in realizing that, to feel that as an invitation for myself on how could I transform my worldview, you know, and how could I assimilate a different way of seeing things, and in the way I saw things, in the way I related to things, in the way the words I chose.
But I would say it's quite a special experience you had in India.
It was.
Because it's not a normal reality in India as well. As I grew up in India, and I only saw I and me and I and me. And to the contrary, when I came here to Brazil, I really saw us and we.
Yeah, true.
And more of a connected world than I saw in India. As I'm saying, you've had a special experience that I guess I had in Brazil.
Right.
To the contrary.
Yeah.
Right. So as you travel across to the other side of the world, somehow we connect something deep within ourselves. Like
Yeah.
I felt spiritual in here.
Yeah.
The first time I started meditation was here, in terms of like really meditating on a daily basis. Here I felt connected more to myself than I ever did in India. And you had an opposite experience. So it's very interesting how travel can bring that
Yeah.
to us. Right?
Yeah.
And specific places, as you said, you felt like you had a past life in India. I felt like I had a past life in Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I think changing your context can change everything, you know? And you can listen to things in a complete different way and with new ears.
Yeah.
Almost.
That was the second experience. What are the other visits you are having?
And then I think the third experience was one day when I was in Pushkar, and it was camel fair, and it was really busy. And I was walking, you know, that maze, that bazaar thing, like, you know.
Yeah. The markets, right?
The market.
Everything is sold in the markets.
Yeah, which I love, and I always did, even in Brazil here, like, you know, the feiras. And I was walking there, and then all of a sudden I just had this realization. I was like, wow, we're like bubbles. Like, we walk around life with an energy, like a bubble of energy around us. And what we do is we mingle with each other's energy and with each other's bubbles. And then the subtlety in the game is really how to not let your bubble become too shrunk or too expanded, but just, you know, or to be pierced, but just to, like, interact with each other. And I just had this huge, crazy, like, realization about chaos and order, and how chaos and order could coexist and they could dance together. As I saw those people moving around, I can still even see the image. And that for me is also something that India taught me. It is how chaos and order can live together, hand by hand. And at times, again, for someone coming from the West, it can be very overwhelming to see all that chaos. But there's so much order in that chaos, you know, especially if you look at the traffic jam, and there's just a dance going on.
There's a lot of chaos in India.
There's a lot of chaos, and it is overwhelming. But when you're able to see beyond the veil and kind of just, you know, appreciate for what is. And years later, when I started working with leadership development, and a lot of some of the mindset and the foundational mindset that was behind the work that I was doing is about chaos and order. It is about finding the right balance between the two of them, what we call the chaotic. So for me, it was such a wow moment that I just tied it back right to India when I understood that concept just by myself, you know. And I think what, you know, Brazilians are good at, and Indians are good at, and Africans are good at, is exactly to dance in that mist, in that, you know, because then it becomes even misty, really, in the midst of chaos and order, and finding and being able to produce and being able to do things, and, you know, in that, which I think is more and more of the gift of what we can bring to the developed world, so-called developed world, is really how do we navigate uncertainty, and how do we not know, and, you know, and how do we just drive and still be okay with that, and not have all those rules. You have to stop here, and traffic light, and, like, you know, I know there's lots of people who die in traffic jam in the Netherlands, in India, but there's just something, and then when you understand the more subtle side of it, which means that we're all interconnected, and things are much more interconnected than we know, and we don't need to control it all. But if we were only to just like look and sense each other's energy and where we're going and who's coming where, we could actually, and respect, we could definitely navigate, in a much more fluid and organic way. And there's a sense of trust rather than pushing, and there's a sense of, or overly organizing, because then years later I had the total opposite experience, which was living in the Netherlands for 6 years, where everything is overruled, and everything is like in tiny little boxes, and you can't do this, and you can't do that, and gosh.
Europe in general.
You just,
as well. Yes.
You just can't live. I mean, for us, it's hard to live in that situation. So just those more subtle things that I see, coming from a fresh eye, obviously, like I was able to see that, maybe you wouldn't. Coming from that fresh eye, those are the things that really stood out for me.
I guess your whole journey in India was self-realization in itself. There are so many things that just came to you as voices and intuitions in just completely random and normal situations. You didn't have to go to an ashram, or you didn't have to be with a guru to learn these things. You had these things inside you, and I guess India just brought it to you naturally.
You could say so, yeah.
So that's amazing. What you said just about chaos and order, how do you relate that in leadership? What do leaders learn from this concept? And how do they apply it into their lives?
So, we very much now live in a world where we cannot predict what's going to happen, right? And things are shifting, they're shifting rapidly. People are shifting, the demands are different, the expectations are different than they used to be. There's a huge generational gap and clash also. So industries are really need to reinvent themselves. But no path is marked. So nobody knows which way to go. Like, it's not that it's clear cut and you just need to follow it. And obviously there are a few companies which are leading the way and people are following behind them. But even then there are some specifics that need to be tailored by you. It needs to be crafted by you. So a lot of the work that I help people do and that I help companies do is to find a way to craft that road and to open those pathways by expanding their ability to think beyond what's shown, beyond what's obvious. And that requires the ability to stand in the not knowing, which is very much of a practice that meditation helps a lot and mindfulness helps a lot, which is really just sit and be in the present. It doesn't matter what the past was, you don't know what the future will be, so just sit in the present and be ready. It doesn't mean like just sit and be lame. No, be ready and be alert. And that's a quality of leadership that we're needing to develop more and more. And so when I talk about chaotic leadership, it's really that ability to, say on the order side of things to cast the right team, to bring together the right people to be with you, the most excellent with the right skills, to have the right budget and the organization and the infrastructure that you need, all of those things that really require order. And then along with them, look into the unknown. It's like, okay, what's the chaos here? Like, we don't know how much we're going to earn this year, or we don't know what markets are going to look like, and shares and this and that.
How to change our product.
Or how to change our product. But we accept it, and we allow what's not predictable and what seems like obstacles to come to us, and we see them as gifts, and we look at them and we transform them and we adapt them. So say, if your client all of a sudden decides to not buy it from you and buy it from someone else, what is it telling you? Just look at it from an invitation perspective and say, what is it telling me? How can I take that as information, as data for me to go back home and do my work in the lab to redesign to something that clients really need? So that ability to dance between chaos and order really requires less fear and
trust.
It really requires trust. It requires courage. it requires not only trust in others, but also like trust in it, but also trust in others, trust in yourself, you know. Yeah. And then in that, just I think once we let go of control and we let go of order as much, we enable ourselves to get into something that we can call rhythm.
Flow.
Rhythm and flow, which honestly they're much more natural. They are nature. That's how nature works. Nature works in rhythms. And with this frantic life that we live, we oftentimes just forget what rhythm is. And so everything has, you know, a beginning, a middle, and end. Or a seed takes time, and it goes into the sea, into the ground, and you don't see it for a while, and then it grows. Like all of this, we forget. So when we allow not to control, you allow rhythm to take over, and that shifts things, and that brings it much more of a humane perspective to how you lead, to how people follow you, you know, to how you are compassionate with yourself as a leader as well, and how you hold yourself for like maybe not being so on point and bright that day or that period, but just allow yourself to be liquid for that, because that's how life is, you know. And just like water is liquid, it's solid, is vapor, like there's so many.
Life is liquid.
Yeah, you know, and it takes so many forms. So there's just a sense of going back to being more us and more in tune with nature.
A very beautiful perspective.
Thank you.
Especially at this moment, businesses need a big change in how they operate. Right? They have to be more open. They have to be able to change their directions faster, rather than the current asset of any leader or business would not be to know all the information, because that age is gone. Now is to be aware and being able to change themselves according to the new information.
Exactly.
Because now there's no straight path as it was before. Profits and products and people's minds and their demands are changing. We are facing climate change and the biggest extinction events that we have ever seen in the history of humanity so far.
Yeah.
Do you talk about that as well in the leadership programs?
About technology?
About, I would say, climate change and the issues that we face at large.
Also, yeah, a lot of the clients that I work with are looking into solution spaces for such kind of, you know, more societal issues. So yeah, and alerting them and making them, you know, if they're not aware yet, to just think about those things and realize those things. But most people that I work with are already pretty much in sync.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how do they respond when you talk about order and chaos, and how do they change their lives and their decisions?
So if I think of it, I don't really talk about it openly like I did now.
Okay. Is it still a little taboo?
No, not so much. It's just I bring them into exercises that bring forth elements of it, you know, that have to do with, as I said, like leading with uncertainty. Are you able to let go of your story to assimilate other parts, other, you know, bits of the story, and then make it a better story? And I do that all through exercises that come from the improvisational theater. So people can really feel it in their body as they're playing, because really it's a big play, it's a big game. They can then like, oh my God, it's so difficult. And then if I bring back to my work, that's exactly what I do. I'm often telling people, yeah, but this is not gonna work. Whereas, I should be telling them, yes, and what if we did this, and yes, and this is an awesome idea. Let's build on top of that, this and that. So small things that make them realize how non-innovative, non-open, oftentimes they are. And it's not them, it's just the education that we got. And at the same time, I think, now that I'm thinking about it, it could also be very valuable to just have more conversations in which they would be told maybe what I said now, like about rhythms and flow and getting in contact with it, and just bringing more of that. I would say something more of this integral spiritual perspective into
they
the
buy
picture.
into it. Are they ready yet, or?
I think a lot of them are. Yeah. And again, it's how you dress it, right? And which wording do you use? But I think most of the people are. At least the ones that end up working with me, they're looking for it, and they might not just be given the chance to ever come across it. So it's also about showing what's the possibilities
And I guess your practice would grow as well, right? You would cover more topics as you go forward.
Yeah.
It would focus on things that are the need of this moment, of this time, and then later on you go on to something else.
Yeah, precisely. But already just enabling people to, from a team, say, for the first time, to actually meet and really talk and really create together in a different way and come up with crazy ideas that are actually brilliant ideas and feel empowered by that. That's world shifting. It's huge, Then talking about rhythm is another level.
Yeah.
But just getting people to experience that potency inside them, and they've hold it, they have it, the ability to create in that level with their colleagues. It's really amazing.
So what are the main abilities that you see that are most common in good leaders?
One I would say is lateral thinking. So this ability to think really lateral, like to just what I would call kind of the image that comes to me is being an alchemist who grabs things from different disciplines and different domains of knowing in order to put it all together in order to come up with something new or with a new solution. Or so this ability, like being an alchemist in your thoughts, and also in your way of doing. So like, are you putting yourself out there? Are you going to different networking events that are not, from your industry? Are you watching movies that are not from your industry? Like everything, life is out there, like bursting in inspiration and invitations. Like it's just everything is out there, and you don't have to go to MIT, and you don't have to be a genius to go to the movie and listen to a quote and say, oh my God, I could use that in my next ad, or
That's
like
awesome.
So many things. So I would really say just being an alchemist and being a wanderer, someone who wonders and someone who has the sense of wonder and curiosity for everything and sees potential in anything. The other thing is, it's empathy in the sense of, are you able to talk to the people around you? And are you able to really talk to them? Listen and ask the right questions. Like a good leader has to know to ask questions, and good questions, and wait for the reply. And I'm not only talking about your coworkers or your employees. I'm talking about your wife and the maid that works in your house and the portier, and the taxi driver. Are you able to empathize with them and to really put yourself in their shoes and to listen to their stories? Because everybody's got a story. We all have stories, and our stories matter. They really have power. So again, like the more we listen to each other's stories, because that's something we've lost in the old traditions, in the old communities. we would circle around and tell each other our stories, right? And the stories of the day, and stories of our ancestors. We don't do that anymore. Now, it's our responsibility to re-bring that back to modern society in any opportunity, because that will inspire you. For sure, that will inspire you. And it will teach you more about people. It will teach you more about humanity. So when he comes to you to be the one in front, you will know, like what to pull out of your sleeves and which stories to tell and how to relate with someone else's story. That's the second thing. The third thing I would say is the ability to sit in silence. Because, so much of us really gets lost in gadgets and computers and social media and frivolous gatherings and cocktails and networking events and God knows what, that we don't even know who we are anymore, and what do we really want and what is our soul really striving to be, unless we listen to it. And being in silence means taking a walk, just making it a practice to go for, I don't know, an hour, two, half an hour by yourself, somewhere you love, nature preferably, and just take a walk, or go to the beach, or sit in your room and write in your diary. Like anything that's not occupying our minds again and again and again, but is just kind of really unclutchering and really allowing for the soul to speak, allowing for the self to speak. Because it's got lots of things to say. We just need to listen to it. I would say these are my top 3 things.
Why silence? What happens in silence?
Life happens in silence. I mean, think of a baby. Think of an embryo. It takes 9 months in silence to be formed. I don't know. I just think life happens in silence. There's beauty.
Is there a need of self-realization? And I would say, in terms of, do you know yourself? What do you really want out of your life?
Yeah.
Are you clear about your own self before you are leading another company, and you make others clear about the goal of the company? Do you know your?
Yeah, surely.
Right.
Surely. I think that you won't know until you've got to listen to yourself. Like, just what is it that he wants? Because so many times one can go around in life and be stepping up the ladder of life and career and kids and wives and husbands, but then not really listening to that tiny little voice that is doing all it can to warn you and to tell you, hey, it's not that way. Like, this is not where we're supposed to be going, And it's frightening, and it can be frightening at times to listen to that voice and give space to that voice. But most of all, it's just liberating, because it's there, and it's there to help you, and it's you. It's not something like this being, no, it's you. And the most beautiful inspiration also happens in silence, The most beautiful poems and sonnets and, music. It was created from silence. So I think sitting in silence is an important practice. And it doesn't have to be, as I said, it doesn't have to be meditation. Mm-hmm. I don't meditate. I can't. It's not my nature.
Okay.
But I meditate in different ways. I have my own other way. But I love going for walks, and I love taking care of my garden, for example, and sitting at home.
Just being with yourself.
Just being with myself, exactly. I think sitting in silence means, can you hold the company of yourself? Can you, do you like your own company?
Are you happy with yourself?
Are you happy with yourself? Can you just sit with you? Nobody else around, just you. You don't have to entertain anyone. Nobody will entertain you. You're not gonna stuff your food, your face with food. It's just you. And is that complete? Is that enough? And I think that's a path for lots of us. to just encounter that wholeness in ourselves.
That's beautiful. I never heard three such important aspects of a leader. I always believed that they are, but nobody from the industry of teaching leaders say that. You are the first person that I hear that focuses on these three, the most important aspects. I believe the same as well. So would you say a leader has a spiritual side on his path in his life in some ways? A good leader.
I think we all do. We all do, and maybe the first step is to decouple like spirit from spiritual, you know? Because I believe a lot of people get held back in the spiritual word, because it oftentimes implies a tradition or a lineage or a practice.
About spirits and stuff.
Not necessarily, not necessarily, but it would just imply, oh, so that means you follow Buddhism, or you follow this, or you follow that, and it becomes heavy. Like the word spiritual, I think it becomes heavy. Whereas for me, spirit, it's something more free. It's our soul, is our birthright, it's our essence, you know, it's our light. So, and I believe that we all hold light within us. We all have that special light that is just ours and no one else's. So yeah, if a leader has a spiritual path in front of him or her, sure. And that path is becoming more true to who you are and leading from that place, you know, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, allowing the people that work with you to be vulnerable, to not know, to look for the way together, to ask for help, you know, that.
So how, let's just be in silence for 10 seconds. Thank you so much for this beautiful opportunity. I'm very grateful.
My pleasure. It's been amazing. I really loved it. Thank you for the opportunity of, you know, as we speak, we listen, and it's always very good to learn. Thank you.
So how is your spiritual path? What are the practices you do? Or just your understanding of spirituality, I would say? It's hard to put into words, I guess.
Well, you know, it's taken me a long time to accept that I wasn't going to have many streams of, like, that I wasn't going to follow all these different streams of spiritual teaching. And from early on, I knew that I had a lineage and a tradition that came from my families.
What was that?
It's this Brazilian tradition, and for years I traveled the world, and I would look into Hinduism and Judaism and Sufism, and always interested to learn more from those traditions, and kind of looking for a teacher. Until 2 years ago, when I just stopped and I said, why look so far away when it's all in front of me and it's always been there, you know? So I think for me, my own path has been to surrender and to find wholeness and calmness into the tradition where I belong, and to follow that tradition, and because it was a true yearning in my heart. and it's been great to be able to then surrender, in that level of saying, okay, well, I'm not alone. I don't have to handle this complexity of what it means to be a human and what it means to relate with God and what it means to, on my own. There are more masters, like masterful people out there who have thought about it, who can do it, and actually there's this, there's one teacher who can accompany me on this path, so it's awesome. And a whole community that goes along with it.
That is Umbanda.
Umbanda, yeah. And so this is where I've been dedicating my, my energy the last 2 years. And it's been great. Also because there's something about a tradition that gives you structure and that gives you enough order to be chaotic, and to allow the creativity and the spirit to move forward and to move on and to teach you. And that order is also, that discipline is also been really good, to me, to which I'm really grateful. So I don't know if that replies to your question, but it
does.
Yeah.
I would say it comes down to trusting, surrendering, and discipline. If these three things are there with you, then I would say you would go on with your life happily, whatever situation.
Yeah. Absolutely. And love. It's got to have a lot of love also. Yeah, I mean, because in my tradition, it requires quite some compromise in a way, and not compromise, but commitment. Like every week I've got to be there from time, this time. It means I cannot travel. It means I can't go out with my friends at that time, and that I believe it only becomes possible and light because there's love involved, for it. You call it whatever name, Oshala, God, Goddess.
Universe.
Yeah, universe, exactly. I can only be very grateful to the path that I'm in, and it's interesting because for years, as I said, like I felt like I kind of was given this destiny when I was young, saying, "Oh, you're going to be, you can be part of this tradition," and da, da, da. And then for I don't know, in the last years, most likely, I just felt this deep sense, this deep hole in my soul. It was just like there was this existential crisis that would never go away. It was always there, and I thought I had to put more energy into work, and I had to be more successful at work, and that's where I was going to fulfill myself, and da, da, da. And eventually, when I totally surrendered to the spiritual tradition that I belong and taking it onto this path, slowly but surely that hole started being filled. And no longer did I have that yearning and that longing and that, sadness that I used to have. And so, in one way or another, I mean, for my story, it's something that I feel like indeed that destiny was something that I needed to meet. And because I've met it and I'm in this process of encountering it, I've been able to grow and to become more of who I am, and hence giving my gifts into the world, and being of service to other people.
It's a very satisfying within myself to hear a story of satisfaction and of trust that you have with what you are doing in your life. It's very rare. And I would say that is the live the life you love. There is no... When I started this project initially, I had lots of concepts about living the life you love is is doing great in your career and making a lot of money and having everything you want. But as I grew as a person, I came more towards the realization that live the life I love is basically being happy with what I have. So it's more in terms of love the life you live.
I love that.
Than live the life you love.
Yes. I love that.
I'm still experimenting with the name. In the end, maybe I might change it.
Yeah, live the life you love the life you live, for sure. For sure. I'm gonna write that in my mirror. My bathroom mirror.
Yeah.
As a
Ama vida que
reminder.
você vive.
A minha vida que você vive. Yeah. Love it. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure. It's been my pleasure. I have so many more questions.
We'll go here forever and ever and ever. No, better not. We'll keep that for episode 2.
We can do that.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
We can meet another time.
Cool. See how this one goes, edit it, put it in the world, how people reply to it.
I don't care about that.
No, I know, but we then do another one.
Yeah.
You know, based on what are your burning questions.
I care about this. If this is happening, this is a beginning of a success.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of a success.
Yeah.
I can never create anything if this is not working.
Yeah.
And I can see how much both of us are feeling that this was worth doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
This was worth spending our time
Yeah,
on.
yeah, I loved it. It's always very good to be interviewed because it brings, it just brings treasures from your box that you didn't know they were there.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. It helps me, and most importantly, live the life you love. I'll see you later.